The Reef by Edith Wharton. Dramatised for radio by Penny Leicester.
Unexpected obstacle. Please don't come till 30th, Anna. All the way from Charing Cross to Dover, the train had hammered the words of the telegram into George Darrow's ears, rattling them out like a discharge of musketry, shaking them like the dice in some game of the gods of malice. And now, as he emerged from his compartment at the pier and stood facing the windswept platform and the angry sea beyond, they leapt out at him as if from the crest of the waves. Unexpected obstacle. Please don't come till 30th, Anna. She had put him off at the very last moment, a fact that shed an ironic light on the idea that there had been any exceptional warmth in the greeting she had given him after their 12 years apart. They had found each other again in London some 3 months previously at a dinner at the American Embassy. When she'd caught sight of him, her smile had been like a red rose pinned on her widow's mourning. She had talked to him, shyly yet frankly, of her marriage to Fraser Leith, and of her subsequent life in France, where her husband's mother, left a widow in his youth, had been remarried to the Marquis de Chantal. She had spoken also with an intense eagerness of affection of her little girl, Effie, who was now 9 years old, and in a strain hardly less tender of Owen Leith, the charming, clever young stepson whom her husband's death had left to her care. He had once or twice run across the man whom Anna Summers had preferred to him, and since he had met her again, he had been exercising his imagination on the picture of what her married life must have been. Her husband, she told him, had devoted himself with religious seriousness to the collection of enamelled snuff-boxes. Their next meeting was in an old country house in the soft landscape of southern England. Mrs. Leith, on this occasion, was no less kind than before, but she contrived to make him understand that what was so inevitably coming was not to come too soon. She seemed to wish not to miss any stage in the gradual reflowering of their intimacy. Darrow, for his part, was content to wait if she wished it. And they did, in fact, see each other in London. She was preoccupied with, as she phrased it, frocks and governesses for her little girl, who had been left in France. Nevertheless, during her brief escapes from duty, Darrow had had time to feel her safe in the custody of his devotion, set apart for some inevitable hour, and the last evening at the theatre, between the overshadowing marquise and the unsuspicious stepson, they had had an almost decisive exchange of words. Unexpected obstacle. Please don't come till 30th. The 30th, and it was now the 15th. She flung back the fortnight on his hands as if he had been an idler indifferent to dates, instead of an active young diplomatist who, to respond to her call, had had to hew his way through a very jungle of engagements. Please don't come till 30th. Not the shadow of an excuse or a regret, not even the perfunctory "have written" with which it is usual to soften such blows. She didn't want him, and had taken the shortest way to tell him so. If I asked her to marry me, she'd have refused in the same language, but thank heaven I haven't, he reflected. She might at least have advised him by telegraphing directly to his rooms. But in spite of their exchange of letters, she had apparently failed to note his address, and a breathless emissary had rushed from the embassy to pitch her telegram into his compartment as the train was moving from the station. This minor proof of her indifference became, as he jammed his way through the crowd, the main point of his grievance against her and of his derision of himself. He thanked his stars that he need not plunge to no purpose into the fury of waves outside the harbour. He would take the next train up from Dover. With this thought in his mind, he turned back to look for his porter, and as he did so, a descending umbrella caught him in the collarbone.
Oh, dear! Oh, dear!
And the next moment, Bent sideways by the wind, it turned inside out and soared up kite-wise at the end of a helpless female arm.
Oh, it's in ribbons.
Here's mine if you want it.
Why, it's Mr. Darrow. Oh, thank you. We'll share it if you will.
Wait here. I'll find my porter.
Oh, please, I can't find my trunk.
You've lost a trunk. Let me see if I can find it.
Not a trunk, but my trunk. I've no other. You better first see to getting your own things on the boat.
I don't actually know that I'm going over.
She knew him, and he knew her, but how and where had they met?
Allow me.
So pleasant a vision as that gleaming up at him between wet brown hair and wet brown boa should have evoked only associations as pleasing. But each effort to fit her image into his past resulted in a memory of boredom and a vague discomfort.
Don't you remember me now?
They had taken shelter in a quiet coffee room.
At Mrs. Moret's.
Oh, Mrs. Moret's. Was it there?
That awful house in Chelsea. Oh, the taste of stale follies.
I used to pass you on the stairs.
Yes, he had seen her slip by. He recalled it now. How could such a face, with the boyish elf lock and the ear that was meant to have a rose behind it, have been merged in the Murrett mob?
But of course you wouldn't remember me. My name is Viner, Sophie Viner.
You're Mrs. Moret's niece?
No, not even that. Only her reader.
Do you mean to say she ever reads?
Dear, no. But I wrote notes and made up the visiting book and walked the dogs and saw bores for her.
That must have been rather bad.
Yes, but nothing like as bad as being her niece.
That I can well believe. I'm glad to hear that you put it all in the past tense.
Yes. All is at an end between us. We've just parted in tears, but not in silence.
Do you mean to say you've been there all this time?
Ever since you used to come there to see Lady Eureka? Does it seem so awfully long ago? Oh, you don't like my saying that you came for Lady Eureka?
It's better than you're thinking I came from Mrs. Moret.
We all used to wonder about you.
What about me?
Well, whether it was you or she who... Well, Mrs. Bolt and the Countess naturally thought it was she, but Jimmy Brance, especially Jimmy.
Who on earth is Jimmy Brance?
But how could you? She was false from head to foot.
False?
You think I'm spiteful and envious? Yes, I was envious of Lady Eureka. Oh, not on account of you or Jimmy Brance. Simply because she had almost all the things I've always wanted. Clothes and fun and motors and admiration and yachting and Paris. Why, Paris alone would be enough. And how do you suppose a girl can see that sort of thing about her, day after day, and never wonder why some women, who don't seem to have any more right to it, have it all tumbled into their laps, while others are writing dinner invitations and copying visiting lists and finishing golf stockings? One looks in one's glass, after all. That's the kind of education I got at Mrs. Moret's, and I never had any other.
Were you there so long?
5 years. I stuck it out longer than any of the others.
Well, thank God you're out of it now.
Yes.
And what, if I may ask, are you doing next?
I'm going to Paris to study for the stage.
The stage? Then you will have Paris, after all.
Hardly Lady Eureka's Paris.
Have you any influence you can count on?
None but my own.
But have you any idea how the profession is overcrowded?
I have a very clear idea. But I couldn't go on as I was.
No, of course not. But since, as you say, you'd stuck it out longer than any of the others, couldn't you at least have held on until you were sure of some kind of an opening?
The truth is, we quarreled, and I left last night without my dinner, and without my salary.
Ah.
And without a character. And without a trunk, as it appears. But didn't you say that before going there'd be time for another look at the station?
There was time for another look at the station, but the look again resulted in disappointment. The fact caused Miss Viner a moment's perturbation, but she promptly adjusted herself to the necessity of proceeding on her journey. and her decision confirmed Darrow's vague resolve to go to Paris instead of retracing his way to London. Miss Viner seemed cheered and sustained by his offer to telegraph to Charing Cross for the missing trunk. The inquiry dispatched, he was turning away from the desk when another thought struck him, and he went back and indited a message to his servant in London. If any letters with French postmark received, forward immediately to Terminus Hotel, Gare du Nord, Paris. Almost as soon as the train left Calais, her head had dropped back into the corner, and she had fallen asleep. Sitting opposite in the compartment from which he had contrived to have other travellers excluded, Darrow looked at her curiously. The story she had imparted to him in the wheezing, shaking cabin, and at the Calais buffet, where he had insisted on offering her the dinner she had missed at Mrs. Murrett's, had given a distincter outline to her figure. From the moment of entering the New York boarding school to which a preoccupied guardian had hastily consigned her after the death of her parents, she had found herself alone in a busy and indifferent world. Somewhere there was an elder sister, Laura, married, unmarried, remarried, absorbed by her pursuit of some vaguely artistic ideal. The guardian then died, the confusion of his financial affairs taking her inheritance with him and plunging her into the wide, bright sea of life. After an interval of repose with compassionate but impecunious American friends in Paris, Miss Viner had been drawn into the turbid current of Mrs. Murrett's career. The Farlows, she explained to Darrow, were the most incorrigibly inexperienced angels, and quite persuaded that Mrs. Murrett was a woman of great intellectual eminence, and the house at Chelsea the last of the salons. The rush into Amiens and the flash of the station lights into their compartment broke Miss Viner's sleep, and without changing her position, she lifted her lids and looked at Darrow. There was neither surprise nor bewilderment in the look. She seemed instantly conscious, not so much of where she was, as of the fact that she was with him, and that fact seemed enough to reassure her.
We shall be in before midnight. We're very nearly on time.
I telegraphed Mrs. Farlow that they mustn't think of coming to the station, but they'll have told the concierge to look out for me.
You'll let me drive you there?
The swaying of the train had loosened a lock of hair over her ear, and she shook it back with a movement like a boy's. It was very pleasant. How differently Anna Leith would have behaved. She would have waked with a start, wondering where she was, and how she had come there, and if her hair were tidy, and nothing short of hairpins and a glass would have restored her self-possession. Darrow felt an intense desire to lean forward and put the lock of hair back behind her ear. As their motor cab, on the way from the Gare du Nord, turned into the central glitter of the boulevard, Darrow had bent over to point out an incandescent threshold.
There.
Above the doorway, an arch of flame flashed out the name of a great actress.
Sardine! Is that where she acts? It's delicious enough just to know she's there. I've never seen her, you know.
Well, you must come with me tomorrow evening to see the play. With your friends, of course. That is, if there's any sort of chance of getting seats.
Oh, will you really take us? Oh, it's too beautiful of you. Oh, don't you think you'll be able to get seats?
It was wonderfully pleasant to be able to give such pleasure. There floated through his mind an answer of Mrs. Leith's to his inquiry whether she had seen the play in question. No, I meant to, of course, but one is so overwhelmed with things in Paris, and then one is always being dragged to see Sardine. This little passage came back to him the next morning as he opened his hotel window on the early roar of the northern terminus. The girl was there, in the room next to him. When they had reached the Farlows' door in the Rue de la Chaise, it was only to find that the Farlows were no longer there. The Farlows had gone to Joigny. To pursue them there at that hour was manifestly impossible, and Miss Viner had quite simply acceded to Darrow's suggestion that she should return for what remained of the night to the hotel where he had sent his luggage. It was the kind of episode that one might, in advance, have characterized as awkward, yet that was proving, in the event, as much outside such definitions as a sunrise stroll with a dryad in a dew-drenched forest. It had been understood that the next morning he was to look up the Joigny trains and see her safely to the station. But he recalled again her cry of joy at the prospect of seeing Sardine. Having dressed, he decided to carry the result of his deliberations to his neighbor's door. It instantly opened at his knock.
Well, what do you think of me?
I think the missing trunk has come, and that it was worth waiting for.
No. My trunk hasn't come, and this is only my old dress of yesterday. But I never knew the trick to fail.
Trick?
Of spinning around like this and saying to everyone, well, what do you think of me? And do you know, they're always taken in.
But this confirms your vocation, of course. You must see Sardine.
Seeing her face fall at this reminder of the change in her prospects, he hastened to set forth his arguments against a hasty pursuit of her friends. Yes, it would certainly be foolish, she at once agreed, to dash off after the Farlows without more positive proof that they were so established at Joigny that they could take her in. Point by point she fell in with the suggestion, but met his proposal that they should drive back to the Rue de la Chaise by the declaration that it was a waste not to walk in Paris. So they set off on foot. Paris shone in morning beauty under a sky that was all broad, wet washes of white and blue. Her delight in the fresh air and motley brightness of the scene gave Darrow a sudden insight into her stifled past. Years of repression were revealed in her sudden bursts of confidence, and the pity she inspired made him long to fill her few free hours to the brim. In the Rue de la Chaise, they learned little except the exact address of the Farlows. This information obtained, Darrow proposed to Miss Viner that they should stroll along the quays to a little restaurant looking out on the Seine, and there, over the plat du jour, consider the next step to be taken.
But it's true. The dishes resemble the way the people talk. They do.
Darrow, as he watched her enjoyment, wondered if her vividness and vivacity were signs of her calling.
Oh, but I must telegraph at once.
You could hardly get an answer to your telegram in time to take a train to Joigny this afternoon. Why not try a letter?
Darrow called for writing materials. In the throes of invention, she had pushed back her hat, loosening the stray lock which had invited his touch the night before.
I wish I weren't such an idiot about writing. All the words get frightened and scurry away when I try to catch them.
He thought of Anna Leith's letters. He saw the slender, firm strokes of the pen, and by an abrupt association of ideas, remembered that at that very hour just such a document might be awaiting him at the hotel. What if it were there, indeed, and had brought him a complete explanation of her telegram? What if it were calling him to her side at once? The revulsion of feeling produced by this thought made him look at Miss Viner with sudden impatience. How he could have wasted half his day with her, when all the while Mrs. Leith's letter might be lying on his table. There was really no excuse for his having blundered into such an adventure. Paris was full of people he knew. And what if some friend of Mrs. Leith's should see him at the play with a suspiciously good-looking companion? At the porter's desk, a brief pas de lettres fell destructively on the fabric of his hopes. Mrs. Leith had not written. She had not taken the trouble to explain her telegram. Darrow turned away with a sharp pang of humiliation. At the theatre, Sophie Viner sat intent in her corner of their baignoire. After the first act, she remained rapt and motionless. When the second act was over, Darrow suggested their taking a turn in the foyer.
They're giving Edith tomorrow afternoon at the Francais. I suppose you've seen it heaps and heaps of times.
You must see it too. We'll go tomorrow.
How can I? The last train for Joigny leaves at 4.
A twinge of compunction shot through him. Though she had given him her letter to post, it was still in the pocket of the coat he had taken off when he dressed for dinner.
Oh, come, we mustn't miss it.
Glancing back from the doorway of their box, above the faces of the Parisian crowd, he caught the fresh, fair countenance of Owen Leith, signaling a joyful recognition. The young man, slim and eager, had detached himself from two companions and was seeking to push through the press to his stepmother's friend. Sophie, as if instinctively warned, melted back into the shadow of their box.
I was sure it was you. Such luck to run across you. Oh, won't you come off with us to supper after it's over? Montmartre? Or wherever else you please. And we'd be so glad.
For half a second, Darrow read in his hospitable eye the termination, "If you'd bring the lady, too."
We'd all be so glad if you come.
Darrow excused himself with thanks, and young Leith left him with the friendly question,
We'll see you at Givray later on?
When he rejoined Miss Viner, Darrow's first care was to find out, by a rapid inspection of the house, whether Owen Leith's seat had given him a view of their box. But the young man was not visible from it, and Darrow concluded that he had been recognized in the corridor and not at his companion's side. His sense of reassurance was less due to regard for Miss Viner than to the persistent vision of grave, offended eyes. During the drive back to the hotel, this vision was persistently kept before him by the thought that the evening post might have brought a letter from Mrs. Leith, and Darrow could hardly wait to ascend to his room. Upstairs, Sophie paused on her threshold, gathering up in one hand the pale folds of her cloak, while she held the other out to Darrow.
If the Farlow's telegram comes early, I shall be off by the first train. So, I suppose this is goodbye.
With a renewed start of contrition, Darrow perceived that he had again forgotten her letter, and as their hands met, he vowed to himself that the moment she had left him he would dash downstairs to post it. As he lifted the hand to his lips, a tremor of pleasure crossed her face. Without even waiting to see her pass into her room, he unlocked his door. The light showed him a telegram on the table. No letter from France, the message from his servant read. Darrow dropped into a chair and sat gazing at the dingy carpet. She had not written then, and it was manifest now that she did not mean to write. Her silence could mean only that she had no explanation to give, or else that she was too indifferent to be aware that one was needed. "This will be goodbye, then," she had said on their last evening in London, and it occurred to him that her parting phrase had been the same as Sophie Viner's. At the thought, he jumped to his feet and took down from its hook the coat in which he had left Miss Viner's letter. A sound in the next room made him pause. A few feet off, on the other side of a thin partition, a small, keen flame of life was quivering and agitating the air. The next day, Sophie had hardly attempted to conceal her satisfaction on finding that no telegram came from the Farlows. Her mind had flown on to the golden prospect of an afternoon at the Theatre Francais. When the play was over, he would have liked to persuade her to drive directly to the Bois for dinner, but she wished first to go back to the hotel to see if the telegram was there. On her threshold, she met him with the expected,
"No, there's nothing. Do you happen to remember what time it was when you posted my letter?"
As she put the question, he entered the room and closed the door behind him.
"I'm sorry, so sorry,"
he said, taking her hands and pressing them together between his.
"I didn't post your letter. I didn't post it because I wanted so much to give you a few good hours, a few days to have all the things you've never had. It's not always May and Paris. Why not make the most of them now? You know me. We're not strangers. Why shouldn't you treat me like a friend? My designs were not nefarious. I saw you'd been through a bad time with Mrs. Moret, and that there didn't seem to be much fun ahead for you. And the truth is, I just liked being with you. You made me forget my bothers. I didn't see why we shouldn't have a few hours together first, so I left your letter in my pocket."
"But are you unhappy too?"
"Forgive me. Do forgive me, but why on earth should we say goodbye if we're both sorry to?"
She hung before him like a leaf on the meeting of cross-currents, that the next ripple may sweep forward or whirl back.
"Do you want to know what I feel? That you're giving me the only chance I've ever had. Is it really going to happen to me?"
Her face, as she lifted it to his, looked so small and young that Darrow felt a fugitive twinge of compunction, instantly effaced by the excitement of the pursuit. All day, since the late reluctant dawn, the rain had come down in torrents. It descended with the regularity of a third day's rain, streaking against Darrow's high-perched windows and reducing their vast prospect of roofs and chimneys to a black, oily huddle. He had drawn his armchair to the fire. The timetable he had been studying lay on the floor. The room was getting on his nerves. It was extraordinary with what a microscopic minuteness of loathing he hated it all. The grimy carpet, the black marble mantelpiece, the high-bolstered brown counterpaned bed, the frame card of printed rules, and the door of communication with the next room. He hated the door most of all. All he had ever meant to do was to give her a child's holiday to look back to. The rain had made all the difference. His cigar had gone out, and he threw it into the fire. A different noise aroused him. It was the opening and closing of the door leading from the corridor into the adjoining room. He sat motionless, his eyes closed. But now another sight forced itself under his lowered lids. It was the precise, photographic picture of that other room. A step sounded on the floor, and he knew which way the step was directed, what pieces of furniture it had to skirt, where it would probably pause, and what was likely to arrest it. Then he heard the mouse-like squeal of a reluctant drawer, and knew it was the upper one in the chest of drawers beside the bed. The step crossed the floor again, drawing near the door of communication between the two rooms. For a moment there was silence. Then he heard a low knock. The step was in the room, coming cautiously toward him. He kept his eyes shut, relaxing his body to feign sleep. Then the rustle of a dress behind his chair, the warmth of 2 hands pressed for a moment on his lids, the lingering scent of some stuff he had bought on the boulevard. He looked up and saw a letter falling over his shoulder to his knee.
Did I disturb you? I'm so sorry. They gave me this just now when I came in.
The letter slipped to the floor. It lay there, address upward, at his feet. While he sat staring down at the slender, firm strokes of the pen, an arm reached out from behind him to pick it up.
Don't.
Don't what?
He became aware that the face was leaning over him, and that in a moment he would have to look up and kiss it. He bent forward first, and threw the unopened letter into the middle of the fire. It was October, and the light of the afternoon lay on an old high-roofed house, which enclosed in its long expanse of brick and yellowish stone the breadth of a grassy court filled with the shadow and sound of limes. In the court, a lady stood. She held a parasol above her head, and looked now at the house front, now down the drive toward the avenue of grass cutting through the wood. Mrs. Leith had come to meet her stepson, and she carried in her hand the letter which had sent her in search of him. But with her first step out of the house, all thought of him had been effaced by another series of impressions. The scene about her was known to satiety. She had seen Givray at all seasons of the year since the far-off day of her marriage. Now she was trying to see it through the eyes of an old friend, who, the next morning, would be driving up to it for the first time. The thrill of his letter gave a keener edge to every sense, as though a thin, impenetrable veil had suddenly been removed. Just such a veil, she now perceived, had always hung between herself and life. In her girlhood, when she had first met young Darrow, his passion had swept over her like a wind that shakes the roof of the forest. He was extraordinarily intelligent and agreeable, but he wanted to kiss her, and she wanted to talk to him about books and pictures. Whenever they were apart, a reaction set in, and she wondered how she could have been so cold, called herself a prude and an idiot, and got up in the dead of night to try new ways of doing her hair. But as soon as he reappeared, her head straightened itself on her slim neck, and she flew her little kites of erudition. She was still quivering with bewilderment when Fraser Leith had appeared and presented her with a prettily bound anthology of the old French poets. It was only in the rare moments when Mr. Leith's symmetrical blonde mask bent over hers and his kiss dropped on her like a cold, smooth pebble that she questioned the completeness of the joys he offered. As she sat in the autumn sun, with Darrow's letter in her hand, the history of Anna Leith appeared to its heroine like some grey, shadowy tale that she might have read in an old book one night as she was falling asleep. 2 brown blurs emerging from the farther end of the wood vista gradually defined themselves as her stepson and an attendant gamekeeper. She watched Owen's approach with a smile. From the first days of her marriage she had been drawn to the boy. Her interest in him led her to think more often of his mother. The loneliness must have been awful, if even Owen couldn't keep her from dying of it. She did not mean, if she could help it, that either Effie or Owen should know that loneliness, or let her know it again. They were 3 now to keep each other warm.
Is Darrow coming?
Yes, I've just heard. He arrives tomorrow.
Oh, you darling.
Oh, Owen! Owen!
He spun her round so that the late sun gleamed on her face. It was the day after Darrow's arrival. They were seated on a bench by the river. Anna silent, so intensely aware of Darrow's nearness that there was no surprise in the touch he laid on her hand. They looked at each other, and he smiled and said,
"There are to be no more obstacles now."
What obstacles?
Don't you remember the wording of the telegram that turned me back last May? Unforeseen obstacle, that was it. What was the earth-shaking problem, by the way? Finding a governess for Effie, wasn't it?
But I gave you my reason. I explained the delay and asked you to come. And you never even answered my letter.
It was impossible to come then. I had to go back to my post.
And impossible to write and tell me so.
Her heart trembled. She felt her happiness so near, so sure, but her very security urged her on. For so long her doubts had been knife-edged. Now they had turned to harmless toys that she could toss and catch without peril.
You didn't come, and you didn't answer my letter, and after waiting 4 months, I wrote another.
And I answered that one, and I'm here.
Yes, but in my last letter I repeated exactly what I'd said in the first. I told you then that I was ready to give you the answer to what you'd asked me in London. And in telling you that, I told you what the answer was.
My dearest, I was hurt and unhappy, and I doubted you. There's the whole pusillanimous truth of it.
Oh, if it's the whole truth.
What can I tell you to make you sure?
You can let me tell you everything first. Owen saw you in Paris.
Oh, yes, so he did.
I think you talked to him a moment in a theatre. I asked if you'd sent me any message. He didn't remember that you had.
In a crush in a Paris foyer.
It was absurd of me, yes, but Owen told me he hadn't had time to say much to you because you were in such a hurry to get back to the lady you were with.
Yes. And what else did he tell you?
Oh, not much. Except that she was awfully pretty. He said you had her tucked away in a baignoire, and he hadn't actually seen her, but he saw the tail of her cloak, and somehow knew from that she was pretty. One does, you know. I think he said the cloak was pink.
Of course it was. They always are. So, that was at the bottom of your doubts.
Not at first. I only laughed. But afterward, when I wrote you and you didn't answer... Oh, you do see.
Yes, I see.
It's not as if this were a light thing between us. If I thought that at that moment, when you were on your way here...
Yes, I understand.
But do you? I'm not a goose of a girl, I know. Of course I know. But there are things a woman feels when what she knows doesn't make any difference. It's not that I want you to explain. I mean, about that particular evening. It's only that I want you to have the whole of my feeling. To see me just as I am, with all my irrational doubts and scruples. I never dreamed I should say such things to you.
I never dreamed I should be here to hear you say them. But now that you have, I know.
You know?
That this is no light thing between us. Now you may ask me anything you please. That was all I wanted to ask you.
For a long moment they looked at each other without speaking. She saw the dancing spirit in his eyes turn grave and darken to a passionate sternness. He stooped and kissed her, and she sat as if folded in wings. It was in the natural order of things that on the way back to the house, their talk should have turned to the future. There seemed no reason why the marriage should not take place within the 6 weeks that remained of Darrow's leave.
You're sure you're prepared to give up Givray? You look so made for each other.
When Owen marries, I shall have to give it up.
That's looking some distance ahead. I want to be told that meanwhile, you'll have no regrets.
There will probably be no meanwhile. Owen may marry before long.
Oh, why, he always seems like a faun in flannels. I hope he's found a dryad. There might easily be one left in these blue and gold woods.
I can't tell you yet where he found his dryad, but she is one, I believe. Only there may be difficulties.
Ah, your mother-in-law?
It's not what she would call a good match. It's not even what I call a wise one. I've promised Owen that I'll prepare her for the news as soon as she comes back from Ushi. She knows the girl and likes her. That's our hope. I can't tell you more till I've told her. I've promised Owen not to tell anyone. All I ask you is to give me time, to give me a few days at any rate. You see, I couldn't bear it if the least fraction of my happiness seemed to be stolen from his. I want our life to be like a house with all the windows lit.
Yet through the haze of bliss enveloping her, Owen's affairs seemed curiously unimportant and remote. Nothing really mattered but the torrent of light in her veins. In his room, Darrow threw himself into an armchair and mused. To be loved by a woman like that made all the difference. 2 or 3 more years of diplomacy with her beside him, he felt modestly but agreeably sure of doing something. And under this assurance was the lurking sense that he was somehow worthy of his opportunity. His life, on the whole, had been a creditable affair. As for the private and personal side, it had come up to the current standards, and if it had dropped now and then below a more ideal measure, he had always remained strictly within the limit of his scruples. From this reassuring survey of his case, he came back to the contemplation of its crowning felicity. The well-being he felt in Anna's presence proved her to be the woman for him. He was thinking of her look when she had questioned him about his meeting with Owen at the theatre, the reddening of her cheek, the way her eyes sought shelter and then turned and drew on him. Pride and passion were in the conflict, magnificent qualities in a wife. The sight almost made up for his momentary embarrassment at the rousing of a memory which had no place in his present picture of himself. She was the kind of woman with whom one would like to be seen in public. "Yes, hang it," he suddenly exclaimed. "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, anyhow." The next day, Owen returned to Givray with his grandmother, his stepsister Effie, and the new governess. Concerning Darrow, Madame de Chantelle received her daughter-in-law's suitor with an affability which implied her knowledge and approval of his suit. Indeed, her awe of his diplomatic profession made her admit the necessity of Anna's consenting to an early marriage, and that she must follow him to the next appointment in South America. Effie Darrow found exquisite. Leaving her at Givray would not be for long, and he was pleased to hear that they had at last found the perfect governess. "Here he is!" Effie cried, scampering down the hall. As she caught his hand, he perceived that she was trying to draw him towards someone who had paused behind her in the doorway. The figure came forward, and Darrow, looking up, found himself face to face with Sophie Viner. They stood still, a yard or two apart, and looked at each other without speaking. As they paused there, a shadow fell across one of the terrace windows, and Owen Leith stepped whistling into the room. He looked extraordinarily light-hearted and happy. He, too, stopped short, and the three stood there motionless for a barely perceptible beat of time. During its lapse, Darrow's eyes had turned back from Owen's face to that of the girl between them. He had the sense that, whatever was done, it was he who must do it, and that it must be done immediately. He went forward and held out his hand.
How do you do, Miss Viner?
How do you do?
The next moment, he again became aware of steps behind him, and knew that Mrs. Leith was in the room. To his strained senses there seemed to be another just measurable pause before Anna said, looking gaily about the little group,
Has Owen introduced you? This is Effie's friend, Miss Viner.
Effie, still hanging on her governess's arm, pressed herself closer with a little gesture of appropriation, and Miss Viner laid her hand on her pupil's hair. Darrow felt that Anna's eyes had turned to him.
I think Miss Viner and I have met already, several years ago in London.
I remember.
How charming! Then we're all friends. But luncheon must be ready.
The little procession moved down the 2 long drawing rooms, with Effie waltzing on ahead. Madame de Chantelle and Anna had planned for the afternoon a visit to a remotely situated acquaintance, and Owen suggested that he and Darrow should betake themselves to a distant covert in the desultory quest for pheasants. Darrow was not an ardent sportsman, but any pretext to get away from the house and not to be left to himself was acceptable. When he came downstairs, the motor was at the door, and Anna, swathing her hat in veils, turned at the sound of his step and smiled at him for a long, full moment.
I'd no idea you knew Miss Viner.
It came back to me, luckily, that I'd seen her 2 or 3 times in London several years ago. She was a secretary or something of the sort in the background of a house where I used to dine.
He had been secretly practicing the phrase all through the interminable hour at the luncheon table.
I'm so glad it turns out that you know her.
No is rather exaggerated. We used to pass each other on the stairs.
But do try and remember everything you can.
As he tramped through the woods, snatches of his companion's talk drifted to him through the confusion of his thoughts. Yet all the while he heard the ceaseless trip-hammer beat of the question, "What in God's name shall I do?" To get back to the house and try to speak to her before Anna's return seemed his most pressing necessity. Finally, toward 4, he told his companion that he had some letters on his mind and must get back to the house and dispatch them before the ladies returned. In the dimness of the hall, he saw Sophie Viner standing by the door in her hat and jacket. She stopped at sight of him, and they stood for a second without speaking.
Have you seen Effie? She went out with her nurse to meet you.
No, but she will find her brother. Won't you come into the study and have a little talk? Everyone's out.
At luncheon she had sat with her back to the window, and beyond noting that she had grown a little thinner and had less vivacity, he had seen no change in her. But now, as the lamplight fell on her face, its whiteness startled him.
You promised to let me hear from you now and then.
There was nothing to tell. I've had no history, like the happy countries.
You are happy here?
I was.
I'm sure you're not thinking of going. There can't be kinder people anywhere.
I suppose it depends on you, whether I go or stay.
On me? Why? Good God, what can you think of me to say that?
Don't imagine I'm the least bit sorry for anything.
You've been here, then, ever since?
Since June, yes.
Your idea of the theatre, you gave that up at once, then?
I had to take the first thing that offered.
I'm glad, extremely glad you're happy here. I'd counted on you letting me know if there was anything I could do. The theatre, now, if you're not contented here, I know people in that line in London.
Then you do want me to leave.
Good heavens, how can you think such things? Ever since, I've been wanting to be of use, to do something, anything to help you.
Then you can help me to stay here.
Through the stillness of the pause which followed, the bray of a motor horn sounded far down the drive. Instantly she turned, with a last white look at him, and fled from the room and up the stairs. He stood benumbed by the shock of her last words. She was afraid, then. Afraid of him. Poor thing. Poor thing, he could only go on saying. In the oak room he found Mrs. Leith, her mother-in-law, and Effie, the group composed prettily about the tea-table. Anna rose at his entrance.
Stop a minute in my sitting room on your way up.
She will want to ask me about the girl, Darrow repeated to himself. From her writing table, where she sat over a pile of letters, Anna lifted her happy smile. He felt the sweep of the secret tides, and all his fears went down in them. She moved to the sofa corner by the fire, and he drew an armchair close to her.
I want you to tell me about Miss Viner. It's important, naturally, that I should find out all I can about her before I leave.
On Effie's account?
Of course.
But you've every reason to be satisfied, haven't you?
We all like her, and Effie's very fond of her, but we know so little, after all. About her antecedents, I mean, and her past history. That's why I want you to try and recall everything you heard about her when you used to see her in London.
Well, I'm afraid I shan't be of much use. As I told you, she was a mere shadow in the background of the house I saw her in, and that was 4 or 5 years ago.
When she was with Mrs. Moret?
Yes. An appalling woman who runs a roaring dinner factory that used now and then to catch me in its wheels.
Then you never really saw anything of her there?
I never had the chance. Mrs. Moret discouraged any competition on the part of her subordinates.
Especially such pretty ones, I suppose.
But surely you could have found out about her from the people through whom you first heard of her.
Oh, we heard of her through Adelaide Painter. Adelaide is a spinster of South Braintree, Massachusetts, who came to Paris some 30 years ago. Madame de Chantal places great reliance on her judgment.
Well, then, if South Braintree vouches for Miss Viner...
Oh, but only indirectly.
I'm not conscious of ever having heard anyone say 2 words about her. I only infer that she must have pluck and character to have stuck it out so long at Mrs. Moret's.
Yes, poor thing. You don't know how glad I am that your impression is, on the whole, so good. I particularly wanted you to like her.
On that condition, I am prepared to love even Adelaide Painter.
I almost hope you won't have the chance to, poor Adelaide. Her appearance here always coincides with the catastrophe.
Well, then I must manage to meet her elsewhere. Oh, what does anything matter but just this?
My love. Oh, my dear love.
A knock on the door made them draw apart. Sophie Viner entered. Seeing Darrow, she drew back, a quick red in her cheeks.
Do come in, Miss Viner.
I'm so sorry, but Effie has mislaid her Latin grammar, and I thought she might have left it in here. I need it to prepare for tomorrow's lesson.
Is this it?
Oh, thank you.
He held it out to her, and as she took it and moved to the door, her blush deepened.
Do excuse my disturbing you.
You didn't disturb me.
Darrow perceived that Anna was looking intently at the girl, while Sophie Viner's glance, making a swift circuit of the room, dwelt for an appreciable instant on the intimate propinquity of armchair and sofa corner. Then she turned back to the door. Till late in the night, Darrow's thoughts revolved in a turmoil of indecision. He was not much afraid of accidental disclosures. Both he and Sophie Viner had too much at stake not to be on their guard. The fear that beset him was of another kind and had a profounder source. He wanted to do all he could for the girl, but the fact of having had to urge Anna to confide Effie to her was peculiarly repugnant to him. Beat about the case as he would, it was clear that he owed it to Anna, and incidentally to his own peace of mind, to find some way of securing Sophie Viner's future without leaving her installed at Givray when he and his wife should depart for their new post. He must obtain from Miss Viner the chance of another talk, and he resolved to seek it at the earliest hour. Darrow found Miss Viner seated near the stone-rimmed basin beside which he and Anna had paused on their first walk to the river. With one of her disconcerting flashes of astuteness, she laid the case before him.
You've known Mrs. Leith a long time? She told me you were friends. Great friends.
Yes, we're great friends.
Then you might naturally feel yourself justified in telling her that you don't think I'm the right person for Effie. I don't say that you like to do it.
You're too various, too gifted, too personal to tie yourself down at your age to the dismal drudgery of teaching.
And is that what you've told Mrs. Leith?
I've told her exactly nothing.
And what exactly do you mean by nothing? You and she were talking about me when I came into her sitting room yesterday.
I've told her simply that I've seen you once or twice at Mrs. Moret's.
And not that you've ever seen me since.
And not that I've ever seen you since.
And she believes you. She completely believes you.
Well,
Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to ask you that. Ah. Then thank you, and let me relieve your fears. I shan't be Effie's governess much longer.
You really do agree with me, then?
I'm not thinking of the stage. I've had another offer, that's all.
You'll tell me about that, then, won't you?
Oh, you'll hear about it soon. I must catch Effie now and drag her back to the blackboard. I've been odious to you and not quite honest.
Not quite honest?
I mean in seeming not to trust you. It's come over me again as we talked, that at heart, I've always known I could.
Her color rose in a bright wave, and her eyes clung to his for a swift instant of reminder and appeal. For the same space of time, the past surged up in him confusedly. Then a veil dropped between them. "Here's Effie now," she exclaimed. He turned and saw the little girl trotting back to them, her hand in Owen Leith's. Even through the stir of his subsiding excitement, Darrow was at once aware of the change effected by the young man's approach. For a moment, Sophie Viner's cheeks burned redder. Then they faded to the paleness of white petals. But her observer was less struck by this than by the corresponding change in Owen Leith. What did it signify? The morning mists turned to rain. Effie, with her governess, had been dispatched in the motor to do some shopping at Francheuil. Anna had promised Darrow to join him later in the afternoon for a quick walk. Anna sat in her sitting room, alone, her hands crossed on her knees, a smile on her face as she recalled the happy picture she had seen that morning from the terrace. Her child, her stepson, her promised husband, the three beings who filled her life. She was roused by the sound of Owen's step in the gallery. As the door closed behind him, she was struck by his look of pale excitement.
You've come to ask me why I haven't spoken to your grandmother.
I've spoken to her myself.
When?
Just now. I left her to come here.
You asked me to help you, and I promised you I would. I was waiting and watching for the right moment.
So was I. That's why I've spoken. And it was just what one expected.
She takes it so badly, you mean?
All the heavy batteries were brought up. My father, Givray, Monsieur de Chantal. Even my poor mother was dragged out of oblivion and armed with imaginary protests.
Well, you were prepared for all that.
I thought I was, till I began to hear her say it. Then it sounded so incredibly silly that I told her so.
Oh, Owen.
Yes, I know. But I couldn't help it.
And you've mortally offended her, I suppose. That's exactly what I wanted to prevent. You tiresome boy, not to wait and let me speak for you.
What were your reasons for waiting?
My dear?
Oh, it's all a tangle, isn't it? That's why I didn't think at all, but just suddenly blurted the thing out. And now she means to send for Adelaide Painter.
Perhaps it's really the best thing for us all.
It's too preposterous and humiliating, dragging that woman into our secrets.
This could hardly be a secret much longer.
You haven't, of course, spoken of it to anyone? You've not said a word to him?
To Mr. Darrow? No.
You're sure that nothing you've said to Darrow could possibly have given him a hint?
Nothing I've said to him, certainly. Now, what on earth, my dear boy, can you be driving at?
I don't know. I want to find out.
Here he is. You can ask him yourself.
Am I too soon? Is our walk given up?
No, I was just going to get ready, but there's something we want to tell you first. Owen is engaged to Miss Viner.
When Darrow that night regained his room, he reflected with a flash of irony that each time he entered it, he brought a fresh troop of perplexities to trouble its serene seclusion. But nothing, as yet, had approached the blank misery of mind with which he now set himself to face the fresh questions confronting him. One feeling alone was clear and insistent in him. He did not mean, if he could help it, to let the marriage take place. No wonder she had been sick with fear on meeting him. When at last he fell asleep, he had fatalistically committed his next step to the chances of the morrow. The first that offered itself was an encounter with Mrs. Leith. She had come down already hatted and shod for a dash to the park lodge, where one of the gatekeeper's children had had an accident. As they hastened together through the drizzle, Anna drew close under his umbrella, and at the pressure of her arm against his, he recalled his walk up the Dover Pier with Sophie Viner. The memory gave him a startled vision of the inevitable occasions of contact, confidence, familiarity which his future relationship to the girl would entail, and the countless chances of betrayal that every one of them involved.
Anna, why are you so anxious for this marriage?
Why? But surely I've explained to you, or rather, I've hardly had to. You seem so in sympathy with my reasons.
I didn't know then who it was that Owen wanted to marry.
Why don't you think her a good match for Owen? Is it the fact that she's been Mrs. Moret's secretary? For as far as Owen and I can make out, this is the gravest charge against her.
Still, one can understand that the match is not what Madame de Chantal had dreamed of.
Oh, perfectly. If that's all you mean.
The lodge was in sight. At the gate she went in, leaving Darrow waiting outside to learn if she had any message to send back to the house. And after the lapse of a few minutes, she came out again. The child, she said, was badly, though not dangerously hurt, and the village doctor, who was already on hand, had asked that the surgeon already summoned from Francheuil should be told to bring with him certain needful appliances. Owen had started by motor to fetch the surgeon, but there was still time to communicate with the latter by telephone. The doctor, furthermore, begged for an immediate provision of such bandages and disinfectants as Givray itself could furnish, and Anna bade Darrow address himself to Miss Viner, who would know where to find the necessary things.
You've forgotten your mackintosh.
I shan't need it.
Wouldn't it have been fairer when we talked together yesterday to tell me what I've just heard from Mrs. Leith?
Fairer?
If I'd known that your future was already settled, I should have spared you my gratuitous suggestions.
I couldn't speak yesterday. I meant to have told you today.
At the lodge he waited while she went in. The child, Sophie told him, was doing well, but Mrs. Leith had decided to wait till the surgeon came. As they walked back in silence, Sophie had accepted the shelter of his umbrella, but she kept herself at such a carefully measured distance that even the slight swaying movements produced by their quick pace did not once bring her arm in touch with his. And noticing this, he perceived that every drop of her blood must be alive to his nearness.
What I meant just now was that you ought to have been sure of my good wishes to trust me a little farther than you did.
I've told you that yesterday I wasn't free to speak.
Well, since you are now, may I say a word to you?
I can't think what you can have to say.
It's not easy to say here, at any rate, and indoors
Shan't know where to say it. Let's walk over to the spring house for a minute.
Sophie followed him without comment.
I can't think what you can have to say.
Have you nothing to say to me?
About my marriage? What can I say that Mrs. Leith has not already told you?
Mrs. Leith has told me nothing whatever but the fact, and her pleasure in it.
Well, aren't those the two essential points?
The essential points to you? I should have thought.
Oh, to you, I meant.
The essential point to me is, of course, that you should be doing what's really best for you.
Do you think my engagement to Mr. Leith not really best for me?
I'm not sure of its being the best thing for either of you.
From whose point of view do you speak?
Naturally, that of the persons most concerned.
From Owen's, then, of course. You don't think me a good match for him?
From yours, first of all. I don't think him a good match for you.
She lifted her lids just far enough for a veiled glance at him, and a smile slipped through them to her trembling lips. For a moment the change merely bewildered him.
He's too young and inexperienced to give you the kind of support you need. He's a boy. A charming, wonderful boy, but with no more notion than a boy how to deal with the inevitable daily problems.
I'll deal with them for him.
They'll be more than ordinarily difficult.
Well, you must have some special reason for saying so.
Only my clear perception of the facts.
What facts do you mean? You think I've no right to marry him?
No right? God forbid! No, I only meant...
That you'd rather I didn't marry any friend of yours.
I'll tell you exactly what I meant. You'll be wretched if you marry a man you're not in love with.
Darrow knew the risk of misapprehension that he ran, but he estimated his chances of success as precisely in proportion to his peril. If certain signs meant what he thought they did, he might yet, at what cost he would not stop to think, make his past pay for his future.
You're mistaken. You're quite mistaken in thinking what you think. I'm as happy as if I deserved it. Now, are you satisfied?
She stood up and moved toward the door, turning her vividest face to him from the threshold. Down the avenue there came to them the voice of Owen's motor. Instinctively they drew apart at the sound. Without a word, Darrow turned back into the room, while Sophie Viner went down the steps and walked back alone toward the court. Miss Adelaide Painter's arrival at Givray produced the same effect as the winds hauling around to the north after days of languid weather. Madame de Chantal, as the result of her friend's ministrations, was able to appear at the dinner table, rather pale and pink-nosed, and casting tenderly reproachful glances at her grandson, and the situation was relieved by the fact that Miss Viner, as usual, had remained in the schoolroom with her pupil.
A girl oughtn't need a dossier. It's enough to know that she's pure and lovely, even if we don't know the address of her sister. I dare say the sister's one of the dreadful people she may indeed have been mixed up with.
Darrow's interest in Miss Painter was increasing with the shrewdness of her answers, and beneath the gimlet gaze he struggled to hide his amusement.
It's a real old-fashioned American case, as sweet and sound as homemade bread. Well, if you take his loaf away from him and hustle him into a marriage with one of your sweet French ingenues with as much snap as a soft-boiled egg, it's 10 to 1 they'll come together in unlawful ways.
Victory was perched on Miss Painter's banners. He felt at last that both resistance and apprehension were vain. He had done what he could to deflect the course of events. Now he could only stand aside and take his chance of safety. Underneath this fatalistic feeling was the deep sense of relief that he had, after all, said and done nothing that could in the least degree affect the welfare of Sophie Viner. That fact took a millstone off his neck. The next day his sense of security was increased by a decisive incident. It became known to the expectant household that Madame de Chantelle had yielded to the tremendous impact of Miss Painter's determination, and that Sophie Viner had been sent for to the purple satin sitting-room. At luncheon, Owen's radiant countenance proclaimed the happy sequel, and Darrow, when the party had moved back to the oak room for coffee, deemed it discreet to wander out alone to the terrace with his cigar. The conclusion of Owen's romance brought his own plans once more to the front. When he had left London, his ambassador had accorded him a 10-days leave. It was indeed a relief that he was under a positive obligation to end his visit within the next 48 hours. Anna, when she finally joined him on the terrace, agreed that they would tell Effie this very afternoon, and then Anna and he would be married in Paris a day or two before the departure of the steamer which was to take them to South America. The rest of Darrow's day was a succession of agitating scenes, from the child's radiant welcome to the warm bath of sentimental curiosity afforded by the attentions of Miss Painter. In honor of the double betrothal, Effie and Miss Viner were to appear that evening at dinner, and Darrow, on leaving his room, met the little girl springing down the stairs. Sophie Viner was behind her pupil, and as she came into the light, Darrow noticed a change in her appearance and wondered vaguely why she looked suddenly younger, more vivid. Then it occurred to him that it was the first time she had appeared at dinner since his arrival at Givray, and surely she was wearing the dress he had seen her in every evening in Paris. It was a simple enough dress, black and transparent on the arms and shoulders. The same dress? That proves that she's forgotten, was his first half-ironic thought, but the next moment, with a pang of compunction, he said to himself that she had probably put it on for the same reason as before, simply because she hadn't any other. As Effie whirled away down the gallery to the door from which her stepbrother was emerging, Sophie Viner turned abruptly back to Darrow.
"You too," she said. "I didn't know."
About the dinner table, the little party had an air of somewhat self-conscious festivity, in spite of flowers and champagne. There were frequent lapses in the talk, and moments of nervous groping for new subjects. To Darrow's strained attention, even Owen's gusts of gaiety seemed to betray an inward sense of insecurity. After dinner, however, at the piano he broke into a mood of extravagant hilarity and flooded the room with the splash and ripple of his music. Sophie Viner had placed herself in a chair near the piano, where she sat with head thrown back in the same rapt fixity of attention with which she had followed the players at the Théâtre Français. The accident of her having fallen into the same attitude, and of her wearing the same dress, gave Darrow, as he watched her, a strange sense of double consciousness. To escape from it, his glance turned back to Anna, but from the point at which he was placed, his eyes could not take in the one face without the other, and that renewed the disturbing duality of the impression. Suddenly Owen broke off with a crash of chords and jumped to his feet.
"Oh, what's the use of this? With such a moon to say it for us."
Yes, let's go out and listen.
Darrow and Anna, with Effie between them, strolled to the farther corner of the terrace. They stood beneath the trembling beauty of the sky. When they turned back, Darrow saw that Owen and Sophie Viner had gone down the steps to the garden. Sophie had paused in a patch of moonlight, and Darrow noticed that she had thrown over her shoulders a long cloak of some light color, which suddenly evoked her image as she had entered the restaurant at his side on the night of their first dinner in Paris. The next day was Darrow's last at Givray, and he had asked Anna to devote an early hour to the final consideration of their plans. They were to walk down to the river. A knock on her sitting-room door made Anna glance at the clock. Miss Viner stood on the threshold.
"Come in,"
Anna said with a smile, instantly noting how pale she looked. Was that powder on her face? Anna did not like her daughter's governess, her future daughter-in-law, to have a powdered face. Then in a flash the truth came to her. Miss Viner had powdered her face because Miss Viner had been crying.
"My dear child, what's the matter?"
I should like to go away. My friends the Farlows would let me go to them. I should like to leave today, if you don't mind.
"You prefer to be with your friends till your marriage?" "I understand that, but surely you needn't rush off today. There are so many details to discuss, and before long, you know, I shall be going away too."
Yes, I know.
"I suppose you have spoken to Owen?"
No, not yet.
"You mean to say you haven't told him?"
I wanted to tell you first. I thought I ought to, on account of Effie.
"Effie, Owen has a right to ask that you should consider him before you think of his sister. Of course you shall do as you wish."
Thank you.
"You'll tell Owen at once?"
Before she could reply, there was a light tap on the door, and Owen walked into the room.
Darrow's looking for you. He asked me to remind you that you'd promised to go for a walk with him.
"I'll go down presently. You'd better tell Owen, my dear."
Tell me what? Why? What's happened?
Don't look so startled. Nothing except that Sophie proposes to desert us for a while for the Farlows.
To go when?
Today.
Today? Why on earth should you go today? Something's happened. I suppose she must have told you what it is.
She's told me nothing except that she wishes to be with her friends. It's quite natural that she should want to go to them.
Very well, then. Tomorrow, I shall go up to Paris to see you.
Oh, no, no.
Oh, now do you say that nothing's happened?
Owen, dearest, if it's anything that Sophie wishes to tell you, no doubt she'll do so. I'm going down now, and I'll leave you here to talk it over by yourselves.
But there's nothing to tell. Why should there be? I've explained that I simply want to be quiet.
Is that why I may go up tomorrow?
Not tomorrow.
Then when may I?
Later. In a little while, a few days.
In how many days?
Owen.
If you go away today, the day that our engagement's made known, it's only fair that you should tell me when I am to see you.
I'll write.
What will you write?
Owen.
I only want her to say what she means. That she's going to write to break off our engagement. Isn't that what you're going away for?
You ought to speak, my dear. You ought to answer him. What can I do when there's clearly something between you that I don't know about?
Oh, if it were between us.
Is it true that you want to break your engagement? If you do, you ought to tell him now.
Oh, she doesn't dare to. She's afraid I'll guess the reason. She's afraid you will.
Oh, and you must explain what you mean.
Ask Darrow.
I should like to go now.
I quite agree with you, my dear, that it's useless to carry on this discussion. But since Mr. Darrow's name has been brought into it, I want to tell you that you're both mistaken if you think that he's not in sympathy with your marriage. If that's what Owen means to imply.
I don't say Darrow doesn't like our marriage. I say it's Sophie who's hated it since Darrow's been here.
You're absurd, Owen. Why should Sophie dislike Mr. Darrow? And if she does, why should that have anything to do with her wishing to break her engagement?
I don't say she dislikes him. I don't say she likes him. I don't know what it is they say to each other when they're shut up together alone. The first evening she came, in the study. The next morning, early in the park. Yesterday, again, in the spring house when you were at the lodge with the doctor. I don't know what they say to each other. But they've taken every chance they could to say it. And to say it when they thought that no one saw them.
Owen.
Can I help it if I've seen and known what I wasn't meant to? For God's sake, give me a reason. Any reason I can decently make out with.
I didn't suppose it was necessary to give you or anyone else a reason for talking with a friend of Mrs. Leith's under Mrs. Leith's own roof.
I won't ask for one then. I'll only ask you to give me your assurance that your talks with Darrow have had nothing to do with your suddenly deciding to leave Givray.
I give you my assurance. And now I should like to go.
A moment's silence fell. Then there was a knock on the door, and Darrow came into the room.
I came up to see if you were ready, but please send me off if I'm not wanted.
Come in, please. I want you to hear what Owen has been saying. It's much better for you both that this absurd question should be cleared up now. For some reason that I don't pretend to guess, Owen has taken it into his head that you've influenced Miss Viner to break her engagement.
She spoke slowly and deliberately, because she wished to give time and to gain it. Time for Darrow and Sophie to receive the full impact of what she was saying, and time to observe its full effect on them. She had said to herself, if there's nothing between them, they'll look at each other. If there is something, they won't. And as she ceased to speak, she felt as if all her life were in her eyes. Sophie, after a start of protest, remained motionless, her gaze on the ground. Darrow, his face grown grave, glanced slowly from Owen Leith to Anna. With his eyes on the latter, he asked, "Has Miss Viner broken her engagement?" A moment's silence followed his question. Then the girl, without looking up, said, "Yes." Anna stood in the middle of the room. She said to herself with a quick-drawn breath, "If only he doesn't come near me." Darrow's face remained grave, but without the least trace of discomposure.
I'll do whatever you want me to, but I don't yet know what it is.
His smile seemed to charge her with inconsequence.
Owen worships Sophie. And after all, it's not so unnatural that Owen, knowing you and Sophie to be almost strangers, should wonder what you were saying to each other when he saw you talking together in the pavilion.
Well, my dear, and couldn't you have told him?
I?
You seem to forget the position you put me in when I came down here. You appealed to me to see Owen through. Of course I've talked with her alone. I've talked with her as often as I could. I've tried my best to find out if you were right in encouraging Owen to marry her.
I see. I do see.
You must see also that I can hardly say this to Owen.
I don't want you to explain anything to Owen. I want you to speak to Sophie.
Considering what my previous attempts have resulted in.
Do you still believe she's in love with Owen?
How can I answer that without knowing her reasons for breaking with him?
That's just what I want you to find out from her.
And why in the world can't you tell her this yourself?
Don't you see? You must have guessed that Owen's jealous of you.
Jealous of me?
Blind with it. What else would drive him to this folly? And I can't have her think me jealous too. Our only chance now is that she should listen to you. That you should make her see the harm her silence may do.
It's all too preposterous what you suggest. I can't at any rate appeal to her on such a ground as that.
Appeal to her on the ground that I'm almost Owen's mother, and that any estrangement between you and him would kill me. She'll understand. Tell her to say anything, do anything she wishes, but not to go away without speaking, not to leave that between us when she goes.
Darrow waited alone in Anna's sitting room. He heard a step, and Sophie Viner entered. At sight of him she had forced a smile, but it lit up her wretchedness like a candle flame held to a dead face.
Well, you got what you wanted.
What do you mean by what I wanted?
My engagement's broken. You convinced me that it's best I shouldn't marry him.
At the very moment when you'd convinced me to the contrary.
Had I? Well, I really believed it till you showed me. Warned me that I'd be miserable if I married a man I didn't love.
Don't you love him?
I told him as soon as I knew.
Knew that you couldn't marry him?
Knew that I could never live here with him.
For a moment, Darrow continued to search her face perplexedly. Then their eyes met in a long, disastrous gaze.
It is I who ought to go.
Oh, what good would that do any of us now?
Good God, how could I tell?
Oh, we neither of us could tell. After all, it might have been you instead of me.
My dear, oughtn't you, at any rate, to try?
Try to forget you?
I meant, try to give Owen more time, to give him a chance. He's madly in love with you. Go away, but let him hope. I'm going too. We're going in a very few weeks. Going for a long time, probably. What you're thinking of now may never happen. We may not all be here together again for years.
For me, you'll always be here.
Afterwards, Darrow sat motionless, staring back into their past. He remembered, distinctly enough, that he had not meant passion to play a part. Perhaps it was because, when her light chatter failed, he found that she had no other fund to draw on, or perhaps it was simply that there had come a moment when no word seemed to utter the sense of well-being each gave the other, and the natural substitute for speech had been a kiss. Perhaps but for the rain it might never have happened. But what was the use of thinking that now? Darrow had no idea how long he had sat there when he heard Anna's hand on the door. He said to himself, "I must decide on something," and that lifted him a hair's breadth above the whirling waters.
She's been with me. She came and found me on the terrace. We've had a long talk, and she's explained everything.
She's explained?
It's natural, isn't it, that she should have felt a little sore at the kind of inspection she's been subjected to. She told me, frankly, she didn't care to owe her husband to Adelaide Painter. She thinks now that her annoyance at feeling herself so talked over and scrutinized may have shown itself in her manner to Owen and set him imagining the insane things he did. I understand all she must have felt, and I agree with her that it's best she should go away for a while. She's made me feel as if I'd treated her like the bric-a-brac that used to be sent down here on approval.
Then you think it's not a final break?
I hope not. Owen's coming to his senses, poor boy. He's ashamed of his wild talk already. He asked me to tell you so. Promise me you won't be hard on him.
Darrow was finding it easier to smile back at her.
Why should you think it necessary to ask my indulgence for Owen?
Perhaps because I need it for myself. Forgive me, but there were little signs. Once I had begun to watch for them. Your reluctance to speak about her. Her reserve with you. A sort of constraint we'd never seen in her before.
Now you understand why?
Of course I understand. And I want you to laugh at me, with me, because there were other things, too. Crazier things still. There was even, last night on the terrace, her pink cloak. You've forgotten about the cloak? The pink cloak that Owen saw you with at the play in Paris? Yes, I was mad enough for that. It does me good to laugh about it now, but you ought to know that I'm going to be a jealous woman. A ridiculously jealous woman. I don't know why it is, but it makes me happier now to have been so foolish.
A darkness seemed to fall between them. and she drew away from him abruptly.
But she was with you then? Oh, don't say no. Only go and look at your eyes. Don't deny it. What will be left for me to imagine if you do? You must speak.
Yes, I did see her in Paris. Yes, I was with her at the theatre one night. She didn't wish it known that I'd met her. She had quarrelled with Mrs. Moret, and she didn't want the Farlows to hear of it. I came across her by accident, and she asked me not to speak of having seen her, because the Farlows had found the place for her, and she didn't want them to know how badly Mrs. Moret had behaved.
But the Farlows did know. They told me all about it when they sent her to me.
But they may know now, but they didn't then.
That's no reason for her continuing now to make a mystery of having met you.
It's the only reason I can give you.
Then I'll go and ask her for one myself.
Anna, don't do that.
Why not?
It's not like you, not generous.
I don't want to be ungenerous. I don't want to pry into her secrets. But things can't be left like this. It may be some mere trifle she's concealing, something that would horrify the Farlows, but that I shouldn't see any harm in. A love affair, I suppose, that's it? You met her with some man at the theatre, and she was frightened and begged you to fib about it. Those poor young things that have to go about among us like machines. Oh, if you knew how I pity them.
If you pity her, why not let her go?
Go for good, you mean? Is that the best you can say for her?
Let things take their course. After all, it's between herself and Owen.
And you and me. And Effie, if Owen marries her and I leave my child with them. Don't you see the impossibility of what you're asking? She was with someone. Someone with whom... I must know the truth. And surely it's best for her that I should find it out from you.
What you imagine is mere madness. She was at the theatre with me.
Why should you have both made a mystery of that?
I told you the idea was not mine. She may have been afraid that Owen...
But that was not a reason for her asking you to tell me that you hardly knew her, that you hadn't even seen her for years. Even if she had other reasons, there could only be one reason for your obeying her. That's why she's going, I suppose. Because she loves you and won't give you up.
She has given me up.
When he had gone out of the room, Anna stood where he had left her. I must believe him. I must believe him. He had met the girl in Paris and helped her in her straits, lent her money, Anna vaguely conjectured, and she had fallen in love with him, and on meeting him again had been suddenly overmastered by her passion. I must believe him. It was natural, after all, that he should have behaved as he had, defended the girl's piteous secret to the last. She, too, began to feel the contagion of his pity, the stir in her breast of feelings deeper and more native to her than the pains of jealousy. Sophie Viner had then appeared almost immediately, dressed for departure. Anna was struck with surprise, for she found herself seeing her for the first time not as Effie's governess, not as Owen's bride, but as the embodiment of that unknown peril lurking in the background of every woman's thoughts about her lover. She signed to Sophie to sit down on the sofa beside her.
You've decided, then, not to break your engagement?
I thought that was what you wished.
Isn't it best that we should speak quite frankly? Your change of mind obliges me to ask you the question I thought you would have asked yourself. Is there any reason why you shouldn't marry Owen? Do you love someone else?
Oh, you might have waited.
Waited?
Till I'd gone. Till I was out of the house. You might have known, you might have guessed. I only meant to let him hope a little longer, so that he shouldn't suspect anything. Of course I can't marry him. I'd better go.
I want you to know that no one said anything. It was I who...
You mean that Darrow didn't tell you? Of course not. Do you suppose I thought he did? You found it out, that's all. I knew you would. In your place, I should have guessed it sooner.
The words were spoken simply, but they went through Anna like a sword. The girl stood up and walked to the doorway, from where she flung back.
I wanted it. I chose it. He was good to me. No one ever was so good.
The door handle turned, and Anna heard her go. Her first thought was, he's going too in a few hours. I needn't see him again before he leaves. Then, on the next wave of feeling, came the desire to confront him at once, and wring from him she knew not what. Avowal, denial, justification, anything that should open some channel of escape to the flood of her pent-up anguish. Anna looked at herself in the glass above the mantelpiece and passed her hands over her hair. Her eyes were burning. Otherwise she could see no change in her appearance, and she wondered that at such a moment her body should seem as unrelated to the self that writhed within her as if it had been a statue or a picture.
I know everything. Nothing you can say will help.
I don't even know what you mean by everything. Won't you tell me what Miss Viner told you?
I implored her to deny it, and she couldn't. Oh, go, please go. It's too horrible. Why should I have to see you?
Of course I'll do as you wish, but if I go now, am I not to see you again?
You must see it's useless.
I might remind you that you're dismissing me without a hearing.
I've heard you both.
Owen knows I meant to leave tomorrow. Any sudden change of plan may make him think...
Oh, she saw his inevitable logic. It had seemed possible to control her grief while she was upheld by the belief that this was their last hour together. But her courage failed at the idea of having to conspire with him to shield Owen, of keeping up with him for Owen's sake, a feint of union and felicity. To live thus for another 24 hours seemed harder than to live without Darrow for all the rest of her days.
Anna, let me talk to you quietly. I've no defense to make. The facts are miserable enough, but at least I want you to see them as they are. Don't think this a plea for myself. All I ask you is to be generous to Miss Viner.
You're free to be as generous to her as you please.
Yes, you've made it clear to me that I'm free, but there's nothing I can do for her that will help her half as much as your understanding her would.
Nothing you can do for her? You can marry her.
You certainly couldn't wish her a worse fate.
It must have been what she expected, relied on. Or what is she? What are you? It's too horrible. On your way here... to me?
That was it. I was on my way to you. After repeated delays and postponements of your own making, at the very last you turned me back with a mere word, and without explanation. I waited for a letter, and none came. I'm not saying this to justify myself. I'm simply trying to make you understand. I felt hurt and bitter and bewildered. I thought you meant to give me up. And suddenly, in my way, I found someone to be sorry for, to be of use to. That, I swear to you, was the way it began. The rest was a moment's folly, a flash of madness, as such things are. We've never seen each other since. And she had the excuse of her loneliness, of miseries and humiliations that a woman like you can't even guess.
She saw I was sorry for her, and it touched her. She made too much of it. She exaggerated it. I ought to have seen the danger, but I didn't. There's no possible excuse for what I did. I swear to you, it was simply that, and nothing more.
I don't think I understand what you've told me.
No, you don't understand.
I don't want to. About such things.
Don't be afraid. You never will.
You mean I don't feel things? I'm too hard?
No, you're too high. Too fine. It's best on all accounts that I should stay till tomorrow, but we needn't meet again alone. I only want to be sure I know your wishes.
My wishes?
As to Owen.
Well, they must never meet again.
It's not likely they will. What I meant was that it depends on you to spare him.
He shall never know.
This is goodbye, then.
At the word, she seemed to understand for the first time whither the flying moments had been leading them. Resentment and indignation died down, and all her consciousness resolved itself into the mere visual sense that he was there before her, near enough for her to lift her hand and touch him, and that in another instant the place where he stood would be empty. She felt a craven impulse to cry out to him to stay, a longing to throw herself into his arms and take refuge there from the unendurable anguish he had caused her. Then the vision called up another thought. I shall never know what that girl has known. And the recoil of pride flung her back on the sharp edges of her anguish. Goodbye, she said, in dread lest he should read her face. And she stood motionless, her head high, while he walked to the door and went out. Anna Leith, 3 days later, sat in Miss Adelaide Painter's drawing-room in the Rue de Matignon. It was only the discovery, that very morning, of Owen's unannounced departure for Paris that had forced her back to action. She had, as people said, kept up during the 24 hours preceding George Darrow's departure, and even contrived not too obviously to avoid him. Then, the next day before dawn, from behind the closed shutters where she had kept for half the night her dry-eyed vigil, she had heard him drive off to the train. He was gone. He would not come back, and her life had ended just as she had dreamed it was beginning. But if the future was thus void, the present was all too full. What impulse, what apprehension had sent Owen suddenly to Paris? Had his lover's intuition warned him of some fresh danger? If he still felt the need of an explanation, it was almost certainly of Sophie Viner that he would ask it, and it was in quest of Sophie Viner that Anna had dispatched the stolidly unaware Miss Painter. She did not wish to see Sophie, but only, if possible, to learn from her where Owen was. But what would she say to Owen if she found him? What could she say that should not betray the one thing she would give her life to hide from him? The sound of the latchkey made her start. But it wasn't Miss Painter who entered the room. It was Sophie.
I know where Owen is.
I thought he'd promised you to wait for your summons.
He did. But he broke his promise. That's what I thought I ought to tell you. You were afraid he'd guessed. He has.
Oh.
That you know something he doesn't. Something that made you glad to have me go.
Poor Owen. He's told you this.
He hasn't told me because I haven't seen him. I made Mrs. Farlow get rid of him. But he's written me what he came to say, and that was it. And I want to ask you to let me see him.
What use would it be? What could you tell him?
I want to tell him the truth. I don't want him to think worse of me than he need. To think such things you're thinking now. I want him to know exactly what happened. then I want to bid him goodbye.
Wouldn't it be worse for him?
To hear the truth? It would be better at any rate for you and Mr. Darrow.
I've only my stepson to consider.
You're not going to give him up.
I don't think it's of any use to talk of that.
You have given him up. Because of me. Don't you see that I went away so that he shouldn't have to lose you? You can't really love him, and yet you must love him. Or you'd be more sorry for me.
I'm very sorry for you.
Then why won't you hear me? He loves you.
I thought you'd come to speak of Owen.
He loves you. He's never loved anyone else. Even those few days, I knew it all the while. He never cared for me.
Please, don't say any more.
He was sorry for me. That was all he ever felt. I knew it was only for a week. He never said a word to mislead me. I wanted to be happy just once. And I didn't dream of the harm I might be doing him.
Why do you say this to me? You'd no right to let Owen love you.
No. That was wrong. At least what's happened since has made it so. But all that doesn't matter now. I won't see Owen unless you're willing. I should have liked to tell him what I've tried to tell you, but you must know better. You feel things in a finer way. Only you'll have to help him if I can't. It's going to hurt him.
What can I do?
You can go straight back to Givry now, at once. And you can send for Mr. Darrow, bring him back. Owen must be convinced that he's mistaken, and nothing else will convince him. Afterward, I'll find a pretext. Oh, I promise you. But first, he must see for himself that nothing's changed for you.
Anna stood motionless, subdued and dominated. The girl's ardor swept her like a wind.
I do believe you,
she said suddenly, and then she turned and walked out of the room. Anna drove from Miss Painter's to her own apartment. She felt cold and faint, and after she had taken off her hat and cloak, she knelt down by the fire and stretched her hands to it. Gradually, the warmth of the fire stole into her. She seemed to be seated on the hearth in her sitting room at Givry, and Darrow was beside her in the chair against which she leant. He put his arms about her shoulders, and drawing her head back, looked into her eyes. "Of all the ways you do your hair, that's the way I like best," he said. The log dropped, and she sat up with a start. She looked about her, and saw where she was, and hid her face and sobbed.
Will you let me see you? I've come back. I had to come.
Yes.
I can't hear.
Yes.
Anna, it's not possible that you and I should part like that. If I'm to lose you, it must be for a better reason, a deeper one that means a fundamental disaccord between us. This one doesn't. In spite of everything, it doesn't. It's not as black as you imagine.
But she seems to love you.
There's my shame.
I don't know what to think. You say you didn't know she loved you, but you know it now. Doesn't that show you how you can put the broken bits together?
Can you seriously think it would be doing so to marry one woman while I care for another?
I don't know.
You do know.
They broke apart at the sudden peal of the doorbell.
Owen!
Shall I leave you?
Yes. No.
They heard the outer door open, and a moment later Owen walked into the room. He was pale, with excited eyes. As they fell on Darrow, Anna saw his start of wonder.
I came up to meet Mr. Darrow. His leave's been prolonged. He's going back with me.
Owen Leith did not go back with his stepmother to Givray. In reply to her suggestion, he announced his intention of staying on a day or two longer in Paris. Anna left alone by the first train the next morning. Darrow was to follow in the afternoon. Anna tried to picture what Sophie Viner's life must have been, what experiences, what initiations had formed her, but there were veils she could not lift. She looked back at her married life, and its colourless uniformity took on an air of high restraint and order. It struck her with amazement that she had never given a thought to her husband's past, or wondered what he did and where he went when he was away from her. If she had been asked what she supposed he thought about when they were apart, she would instantly have answered, his snuff-boxes. It had never occurred to her that he might have passions, interests, preoccupations of which she was absolutely ignorant. Yet he went up to Paris rather regularly, ostensibly to confer with dealers and collectors. She tried to picture him straight, trim, beautifully brushed and varnished, walking furtively down a quiet street and looking about him before he slipped into a doorway. She understood now that she had been cold to him. What more likely than that he had sought compensations? All men were like that, she supposed. No doubt her simplicity had amused him. In the act of transposing Fraser Leith into a Don Juan, she was pulled up by the ironic perception that she was simply trying to justify Darrow. She wanted to think that all men were like that because Darrow was like that. Why had she forced the truth out of Darrow? If only she had held her tongue, nothing need ever have been known, and her own dream would have been unshattered. But she dragged the secret to the light. There flashed through her the longing to return to her old state of fearless ignorance. If at that moment she could have kept Darrow from following her to Givray, she would have done so. But he came, and with the sight of him the turmoil fell, and she felt herself reassured, rehabilitated. Over the tea-table, Darrow gave Madame de Chantelle the explanation of his sudden return from England. On reaching London, he told her, he had found that the secretary he was to have replaced was detained there by the illness of his wife. The ambassador had immediately proposed his awaiting at Givray the summons to relieve his colleague. Darrow spoke naturally, easily, in his usual quiet voice, taking his tea from Effie, helping himself to the toast she handed. And suddenly, as Anna listened to his explanation, she asked herself if it were true. There was no possible reason why he should invent a false account of his return, but he had looked and spoken in the same way when he had answered her probing questions about Sophie Viner. And she reflected with a chill of fear that she would never again know if he were speaking the truth or not. Can I give Effie a father about whom I think such things? On the second evening, she and Darrow were alone at last. Madame de Chantelle had broken her wooden embroidery frame, and Darrow, having offered to repair it, had drawn his chair up to a table that held a lamp. The sight of him, so tranquilly absorbed in this trifling business, seemed to give to the quiet room a perfume of intimacy. As Anna watched his thin, sunburned hands, her sense of them became as vivid as a touch, and she said to herself, "That other woman has sat and watched him as I am doing. She has known him as I have never known him. Perhaps he is thinking of that now. Or perhaps he has forgotten it all as completely as I have forgotten everything that happened to me before he came." He looked young, active, stored with strength and energy. She wondered what she had to hold or satisfy him. How could she hope to keep him?
They're sure to send for me in a day or two now. You'll tell me before I go what day I'm to come back and get you?
There's something I've been wanting you to know. The other day in Paris, I saw Miss Viner.
You sent for her?
No. She heard from Adelaide that I was in Paris, and she came. She came because she wanted to urge me to marry you. I thought you ought to know what she had done.
I'm glad you've told me. Is that all?
It seems to me a great deal.
It's what she'd already asked me.
Oh, it was for your sake, I know. She's been exceedingly generous. Why shouldn't we speak of it?
I've not shrunk from speaking of it.
Speaking of her, then, I mean. It seems to me that if I could talk to you about her, I should know better.
What is it you want to know better?
How could she tell him what she scarcely dared own to herself? There was nothing she did not want to know, no fold or cranny of his secret that her awakened imagination did not strain to penetrate. But she could not expose Sophie Viner to the base fingerings of a retrospective jealousy. The girl had been magnificent, and the only worthy return that Anna could make was to take Darrow from her without a question, if she took him at all. The next morning the dread was still there, and she understood that she must snatch herself out of the torpor of the will into which she had been gradually sinking, and tell Darrow that she could not be his wife. The knowledge had come to her in the watches of a sleepless night, when she pictured herself henceforth cowering before a throng of mean suspicions. She saw that Sophie Viner had chosen the better part, and that certain renunciations might enrich where possession would have left a desert. They were at luncheon when the summons that Darrow expected was brought to him. The idea that the decisive moment was at hand was so agitating to her that when luncheon was over she slipped away to the terrace and thence went down alone to the garden. When she returned, she saw that Darrow was seated at the desk in Owen's study. He heard her step, and their eyes met, and she saw that his were clear and smiling. He had a heap of papers at his elbow. She wondered that he could address himself so composedly to his task, and then ironically reflected that such detachment was a sign of his superiority. When he speaks to me, I will tell him, she thought.
I must go tomorrow, early.
I'll leave you to your letters.
You'll come down presently for a walk?
Perhaps, she thought, it will be easier to tell him there. It did not, on the way home from their walk, become any easier, but her secret decision to do so before he left gave her a kind of factitious calm and laid a melancholy ecstasy upon the hour. A cold rain had fallen all day, and for greater warmth and intimacy they had gone after dinner to the oak room, shutting out the cries of the autumn wind. The solitude and the firelight wove about them a spell of security through which Anna felt, far down in her heart, the muffled beat of an inextinguishable bliss. How could she have thought that this last moment would be the moment to speak to him, when it seemed to have gathered up into its flight all the scattered splendors of her dream?
Tonight, dearest, I must have my answer.
She straightened herself under the shock of his seeming to take the very words from her lips.
I must be off by the early train. There won't be more than a moment in the morning. You'll tell me tonight, dear.
There's something I must ask you.
Her words were not in the least what she had meant to say.
Do such things happen to men often?
I don't know what happens to other men. Such a thing never happened to me.
Had it begun before you met her in Paris?
No. 1,000 times no. I've told you the facts as they were.
All the facts.
What do you mean?
I mean, about her. Perhaps you knew things about her beforehand.
I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. Is that all?
Yes.
Then is this to be goodbye?
Yes.
You understand that I shan't come back.
I shall see you tomorrow, before you go.
They walked down the drawing rooms between the shadowy reflections of screens and cabinets, and mounted the stairs side by side. On the landing, Darrow stopped. "Good night," he said, holding out his hand. As Anna gave him hers, the springs of grief broke loose in her. She struggled with her sobs. Don't," he whispered, and opening his door, he drew her across the threshold of his room. A log glimmered on the hearth. It was the first time she had ever been in a room he lived in, among his personal possessions and the traces of his daily usage. She thought, this is what Sophie Viner knew. And with a torturing precision, she pictured them alone in such a scene. Had he taken the girl to an hotel? Where did people go in such cases? Anna, ashamed of dwelling on the detested vision, stood up with a confused impulse of flight. Darrow had come forward as she rose, and she perceived that he was waiting for her to bid him good night. It was clear that no other possibility had even brushed his mind, and the fact, for some dim reason, humiliated her. Why not? Why not? Something whispered in her, as though his forbearance were a slight on other qualities she wanted him to feel in her. For once, before they parted, since part they must, she longed to be to him all that Sophie Viner had been, but she remained rooted to the floor, unable to find a word or imagine a gesture that should express her meaning. "Don't I feel things as other women do?" Her eye fell on a note-case she had given him, and she put her hand out and touched it. All that he and she had ever felt or seen trembled through her at the touch. She was aware that Darrow was still silently watching her, but he neither stirred nor spoke till she turned to the door. Then he met her there and caught her in his arms. "Not tonight. Don't tell me tonight," he whispered, and she leaned away from him, closing her eyes for an instant, and then slowly opening them to the flood of light in his. Anna had an intense longing to be with Darrow, an almost morbid terror of losing sight of him for a moment. She was his now, his for life. She drew from her bag the letters she had thrust in it as she left the house. Her glance lit on an envelope inscribed in Owen's hand. Her heart began to beat oppressively. What could Owen have to say to her? The page contained simply the announcement that in the company of a young compatriot who was studying at the Beaux-Arts, he had planned to leave for Spain the following evening. He hasn't seen her, then, was Anna's instant thought. The girl had kept her word, lived up to the line of conduct she had set herself, and Anna had failed in the same attempt. Darrow looked up and smiled, and to give herself a countenance, she held out Owen's letter.
That's a good plan. The best thing that could happen.
Yes, they were both glad that Owen was going, that he would be out of their way, and it seemed to her horrible that so much of the stuff of their happiness should be made of such unavowed feelings.
I shall see him this evening.
Yes, of course. Perhaps he might dine with you. I shall, in all probability, have to spend the evening with the ambassador.
On arriving in Paris, she drove at once to Owen's hotel. He sat at a table writing. The window was behind him, so that in the rainy afternoon light his features were barely discernible. For a few minutes their talk dragged itself on over a dry waste of commonplaces. Anna stood up and glanced about for the light switch, saying,
I can't see you, dear.
Oh, don't. I hate the light. I'm half blind with neuralgia. I suppose it's this beastly rain.
He knows, she said to herself, and wondered whether the truth had been revealed to him by some corroborative fact or by the sheer force of divination. He had risen, and was clearly waiting for her to go. She stopped on the threshold with a sinking heart. He meant this to be their leave-taking, then, and he had not even asked her when she was to be married, or spoken of seeing her again before she set out for the other side of the world. In her apartment, the stormy rain beat against the uncurtained windows. Owen would soon be driving through it to the station, alone with his bitter thoughts. She had been proud of the fact that he had always sought her help in difficult hours. And now, in the most difficult of all, she was the one being to whom he could not turn. She was still sitting beside the untouched tea-table when she heard Darrow's voice in the hall. He was free for dinner, after all, and she named a well-known restaurant for which she had once heard him express a preference. But as she did so, she fancied she saw a shadow on his face, and instantly she said to herself, it was there he went with her. Oh, no, not there after all, she interrupted herself. He did not ask the reason for her change, and this convinced her that she had guessed the truth, and that he knew she had guessed it. He will always know what I am thinking, and he will never dare to ask me, she thought. And she saw between them the same insurmountable wall of silence as was between herself and Owen. They drove to a restaurant on the boulevard, and there, in their intimate corner, the sense of what was unspoken between them gradually ceased to oppress her. He looked so light-hearted and handsome, so openly happy at being with her, that no other fact could seem real in his presence. Did she feel disposed for the play? They were not too late for the second part of the program. Anna was about to acquiesce when she wondered, was it at the Athénée that Owen had seen Darrow with Sophie Viner? She replied that she was too tired for the play, and they drove back to her apartment. At the foot of the stairs she half turned to wish him good night, but he appeared not to notice her gesture, and followed her up to her door. And after the theatre they came home like this, she thought, and at the same instant she felt his hands on her shoulders.
Don't, oh, don't.
Anna, what on earth is the matter?
Owen knows.
Did he tell you so? What did he say?
I knew it from the things he didn't say.
Had he seen Miss Viner?
No, I don't think so. I'm sure he hadn't.
I think you ought to tell me what you mean to do.
Nothing I do can help Owen.
No, but things can't go on like this. I fill you with aversion.
No, oh no.
I know you felt as I felt, that we belong to each other, but whenever you see me, you associate me with things you abhor. You've given me all the chances a woman could, but if it's only made you suffer, what's the use?
Wasn't it the Athénée you took her to that evening?
Anna!
Yes, I want to know everything. Wherever we go, I imagine you've been there with her. I see you together. I want to know how it began, where you went, why you left her. I want to know everything. It's the only way to make me forget. Aren't you going to tell me?
No.
Why not?
If I did, do you suppose you'd forget that?
Oh.
You see, it's impossible. I've done a thing I loathe, and to atone for it, you ask me to do another. It would put something irremediable between us.
She hid her face in her hands, her tears running slowly down between her fingers. "Goodbye," she heard him say, and his footsteps turned to the door. She tried to raise her head, but the weight of her despair bowed it down. She said to herself, "This is the end. He won't try to appeal to me again." Then the cords that bound her seemed to snap, and she lifted her head and saw him going. "Why, he's mine! He's mine! He's no one else's!" His face was turned to her, and the look in his eyes swept away all her terrors. She no longer understood what had prompted her senseless outcry, and the mortal sweetness of loving him became again the one real fact in the world. Anna, the next day, woke to a humiliated memory of the previous evening. She owed it as much to his pride as to hers to abstain from the repetition of such scenes, and she had learned that it was beyond her power to do so while they were together. Yet when he had given her the chance to free herself, everything had vanished from her mind but the blind fear of losing him. The only escape from her plight must come from some external chance. It was Sophie Viner only who could save her. She would seek the girl out and tell her that she had given Darrow up, and that step once taken, there would be no retracing it, and she would perforce have to go forward alone. Anna, still mistrustful of her strength, decided to drive immediately to the address Mrs. Farlow had given. Miss Viner had left some days previously, and was staying with her sister in a hotel near the Place de l'Étoile. On the way there, she tried to recall what she had heard of Sophie Viner's sister. But beyond the girl's enthusiastic report of the absent Laura's loveliness, she could remember only certain vague allusions of Mrs. Farlow's to her artistic endowments and matrimonial vicissitudes. The name on the slip of paper, Mrs. McTarvie Birch, did not seem to have any definite association with fame. While Anna waited in the dingy vestibule of the Hotel Chicago, she had so distinct a vision of what she meant to say to Sophie that the girl seemed already to be before her, and her heart dropped from all the height of its courage when the porter, after a long delay, returned with the announcement that Miss Viner was no longer in the hotel. Anna sent back to inquire if Mrs. McTarvie Birch would receive her. The lift bore her up past a succession of shabby landings, and she found herself before a door through which a strong odor of tobacco reached her. Her knock was answered by a handsome young man whose ruffled hair and general air of creased disorder led her to conclude that he had just risen from a long-limbed sprawl on a sofa strewn with tumbled cushions. Anna paused in doubt, but on her naming Mrs. Birch, the young man politely invited her to enter.
Just a minute. I think the masseur's with her. She's perfectly hopeless.
He lounged off through an inner door.
She says it's all right, if you don't mind seeing her in bed.
Anna found herself in a dim, untidy, scented room, with a pink curtain pinned across its single window, and a lady with a great deal of fair hair and uncovered neck smiling at her from a pink bed on which an immense powder puff trailed.
You don't mind, do you? He costs such a frightful lot, I can't afford to send him off,
Mrs. Birch explained, extending a thickly ringed hand to Anna, and leaving her in doubt as to whether the person alluded to were her masseur or her husband.
If you just give him a caramel, there, in that box on the dressing table. Isn't he a beauty? The prince gave him to me down at Nice the other day. Do sit down, if there's a place to sit on. My singing takes so much time, I don't get a chance to walk the fat off. It's the worst thing about being an artist.
I hope it hasn't convenienced you to see me. I told Mr. Birch.
Mr. who? Oh, Jimmy.
I understand from Mrs. Farlow that your sister was with you. And I ventured to come up because I wanted to ask you when I should have a chance of finding her.
Sophie went away last night.
A sudden terror possessed her. Could it be that the girl had tricked them all and gone with Owen? The idea was incredible, yet it took such hold of her that she could hardly steady her lips to say,
Mrs. Farlow seemed to think that I should find her here.
It was all so sudden, I don't suppose she had time to let the Farlows know. She didn't get Mrs. Moret's wire till yesterday, and she just pitched her things into a trunk and rushed...
Mrs. Moret?
Why, yes. Sophie's gone to India with Mrs. Moret. They're to meet at Brindisi. They had a fearful kick-up last spring. I dare say you knew about it. But I told Sophie she'd better lump it as long as the old woman was willing to. As an artist, of course, it's perfectly impossible for me to have her with me. Naturally,
through the confused pain of her thoughts, Anna was hardly aware that Mrs. Birch's explanations were still continuing.
She was a fool to chuck up such a place as yours, but Sophie's restless, always was, and she's taken it into her head she'd rather travel, but...
Anna rose from her seat, groping for some formula of leave-taking. The pushing back of her chair roused the white dog's smouldering animosity, and he drowned his mistress's further confidence in another outburst of hysterics.
Do come again. I'd love to sing for you.
Anna murmured a word of thanks and turned to the door. As she opened it, she heard her hostess crying after her.
Jimmy, do you hear me? Jimmy Brants.
And then, there being no response from the person summoned,
do tell him he must go and call the lift for you.
In The Reef by Edith Wharton, Ben Miles was George Darrow, Jodhi May was Sophie, and Sian Thomas was the narrator. Teresa Gallagher was Anna, Deborah Weston was Adelaide, and Julian Ovenden was Owen. The Reef was dramatised by Penny Leicester, and the producer was Speirs.